Hello everybody, my name is Sally Ann Spence and welcome to another amazing STEM Live lesson. Today I'm here in London City and I'm right outside the Linnean Society. So we're going to be finding out a little bit more about what the Society does, and that's going to include classification and food chains, all sorts of things that you're also learning at home and at school. But before we do that, let's have a very quick look at our learning objectives that we're going to be going through today. We're going to be learning who Carl Linnaeus was. We're going to see how diverse living things rely on each other. We're going to understand binomial nomenclature. There's some big words for you. We're also going to find out how we study life in the wild. And we're going to identify how living things are adapted to their habitats. There's lots of different ways that you can take part in today's lesson. We're going to be using word clouds and polls on Slido. And also there's a competition for you to take part in. So let's learn a little bit more about that. Today's competition is a drawing activity. We will be asking you to draw your own imaginary creature. Now you should have downloaded the resource sheets from the page, but do not worry if you haven't done so already, because a sheet of plain paper will be just fine to start your drawing on. Now there's going to be a prize to be won for the very best drawing, and to have a chance of winning that prize, you need to share your drawing on social media with the hashtag STEMLive. Wow, what a lovely old building we're in. This is absolutely gorgeous. Hello, Aisha.
Hi, so nice to meet you.
And you. Now, Aisha, what is your role here in the Linnean Society?
So I'm the education manager here at the Linnean Society. So I run the education programme, and we look forward to inviting lots of schools into the building, which is always lovely to see.
Now, tell us a little bit. This is called the Linnean Society.
It is.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, of course. So the Linnean Society were named after a very famous scientist. He was a botanist, so it means he's a very special scientist, and what he studied was plants. He was from Sweden, and of course his name was Carl Linnaeus. So the society was named after him, and that's why we are the Linnean Society.
So he was a botanist, so botanist is a plant scientist, okay? Brilliant. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Carl Linnaeus. And what was his specialism? What was he doing? What was so important about him?
So yes, as I say, he specialised in plants, but what he's most famous for is his classification. So what he was able to do at the time, in the 1700s, there was lots of scientists working towards this goal about trying to look at animals and how we could put them into groups so we could better study them and of course learn more about all these new and exciting animals we were discovering in different parts of the world. So Carl Linnaeus wasn't the only scientist, but he was the scientist that came up with a way of classifying plants and animals that we still use today. And the word we use for this is taxonomy.
Taxonomy. Now there's another huge word. Tell us a little bit about taxonomy.
Yeah, so taxonomy, I suppose the best way to describe it is, do you have a dog?
I do. I have a Cocker Spaniel, a very mad Cocker Spaniel.
I hear that's quite popular with the breed. So if you think of dogs, because lots of people have them, they're an animal. We know that they have a backbone. Mm-hmm. Does your dog, what does it like? Does it like broccoli, or would it rather a nice steak?
Oh, I think it'd rather a steak.
So we know that it's a meat eater, so it's a carnivore. And it's a mammal because, of course, it gives birth to live young and it will feed those young with milk. So it fits into a mammal, and then they're part of the wolf family. So this is taxonomy. It's how we're able to look at animals and to group them together and learn more about them.
Now, can we go and have a look round and see what else we can discover?
Yes, of course. Come on.
Thank you. I better take my coat off.
Yes.
All these wonderful pictures up here, Aisha.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about some of them later as well.
They're going to give people a really good, some brilliant ideas for their own drawings along here. Wow, look at them all. So what have we got here?
So this is STEMeducation. So we were talking about Carl Linnaeus and how he classified animals, and this is what he did. He wrote it all down, and we can see these groups. Some of them might be a bit familiar to you already, so let's see if you can guess some. Quadrupedia is our first one.
Quadrupedia, so pedia feet, quad 4?
Yes, so something that walks or has 4 feet.
Oh, well, it could be anything, could it be? Could my dog be in that area?
Yes, It could. So we have a look at what else it needs to be, like we were saying. So it also would need 4 feet or 2 arms, 2 legs, and covered in hair. Is your dog covered in hair?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Is it warm-blooded?
Yes, it's warm-blooded as well.
Brilliant. So all of these things, and we know that as a puppy it would have drunk milk.
Yes, it did, yes.
Which means that dogs fit into this category, which we now know as mammals.
I see.
So all of these are animals. So we've got birds, amphibians, Pisces, insects, and at the very, very end, can you guess the last one?
Ooh, vermes. No, I'm not sure. Because this is not in normal English, is it?
No, so all of this is in Latin, which at the time was the language that most people would, they'd have conversations in and they'd write in. So vermis, I'll give you some clues. They are cold-blooded.
Oh, cold-blooded things, right.
Instead of fur, they are covered in scales, and it would lay eggs.
Or it would lay eggs. So could it be a lizard, things like that?
A lizard, yeah. So lizards, snakes. My favourite one for this group is, of course, crocodiles, and they're all reptiles.
Ah, so reptiles. So we've got mammals, we've got birds, we've got fish, insects, reptiles, and I mean, it's everything on the planet, isn't it? It's all the life. I'm a little bit concerned about this paradoxa.
Yes. This was always one, because now, paradoxa, we know all of these ones, they're very familiar with us, and paradoxa was an added one, and it was for the animals that people weren't quite sure. So Carl Linnaeus, when he started grouping animals, it was quite easy for him to put all of these groups together and see which animals fitted. But when he finished fitting them, there were some that just didn't quite fit. And that's where he got this grouping, which is paradoxa. So they're the animals that didn't quite fit.
So let's have a look. We've got sea monsters. Sea monsters. Do you think you've seen any sea monsters recently? Let's have a look here. Unicorns.
I don't see them here in London, but...
No, I haven't seen any unicorns. Have you seen any real unicorns anywhere? I haven't. And let's have a look. Phoenix.
Yes, one of my favourites.
Wow. So those of you who've watched Harry Potter might have seen a phoenix, but I don't think you're going to see a phoenix flying around anywhere else, are you? So these were things that people thought might exist, but they hadn't got evidence of, so you still had to put them in a category.
My favourite one I'd always think about is, can you imagine somebody come back from a 2-3 year voyage and told you that they'd seen this animal? It was bigger than a tall man, it had the head of a horse, massive strong legs to jump like a frog, and this massive pocket at the front where it was able to store its babies.
Oh, I wonder what you think that might be. Would that be a kangaroo?
It would be a kangaroo. Now we know it was a kangaroo, of course. But at the time, for Europeans, this would have been a very, very unusual animal. But it still fits into the categories that Carl Linnaeus looked at for classification. So even though it's kept in a pouch, of course it's born live, it would feed from its mother's milk, it's warm-blooded, and it has 2 arms and 2 legs, so it was still able to fit in here, so it wouldn't have gone into the paradoxa. So even though we didn't know what it was, they were still able to classify it.
Well, this is a great start because this leads into our competition. So we're going to start with that now, actually. I want you to draw an outline of your imaginary creature. And Aisha's been telling us all sorts of different ways that they're classified and all the different parts of their body and how they're cold-blooded, warm-blooded, all these different things. So we want you to start right now with just drawing the outline of your imaginary creature. And remember, later on, if you put it on social media with a hashtag STEMLive, we will be judging a winner. All these incredible drawings around us. There's even a raccoon up there.
Yes, this is Shook. This was Carl Linnaeus's beloved but very mischievous pet.
So Carl Linnaeus had a raccoon for a pet. That's a little bit different. Incredible drawings. I want you to stop right now though. Put your pens and pencils down, because we're going to just stop for a little while and learn a little bit more from Aisha. Aisha, these drawings here are absolutely beautiful. That one up there with the butterfly, I mean, who's drawn some of these drawings? Who's drawn that one?
So this was by an artist called Maria Sibylla Merian, and as you can see, it's got lots of different animals, and the animals look very different, but they're actually all part of a life cycle of one animal. Can you guess what it is?
Oh, let's have a look. Right, we've got some eggs, we've got a caterpillar, a bit hairy, then we've got the chrysalis on the bottom, but at the top there we've got this beautiful butterfly. So this must be the butterfly's life cycle.
Yes, it is indeed. So this is the life cycle of a butterfly. Now, of course, obviously, we've seen this loads and loads of times. It's something that's quite familiar to us. But in the 1500s, the time that Maria Sibylla Merian drew this, it was believed that what happened is butterflies would just hatch from blooming flowers in spring. So she was the first person to actually draw the life cycle. And how she did this is she went to where the butterflies lived. Now, there's a name for where an animal lives.
Oh, let's think. I think that begins with H. That would be a habitat.
Habitat, yes. She went to their habitat and actually watched them and observed them and noticed that the egg would hatch into a caterpillar. It would eat and eat and eat. It would create a chrysalis. And of course, from that chrysalis would emerge a completely different animal that we know as a butterfly. So by going out and observing the habitats and the life cycles of these animals, she was able to draw this beautiful, very, very detailed picture of their life cycle.
And this also helps us to understand a little bit more about the actual species themselves, because up here you've got a red panda.
Yes.
And you've got, is that pictures of its paws right along the top there?
Yeah, it is. So a lot of these pictures, as we say, Maria Sibylla Merian went out into the habitat to observe these, but a lot of these were drawn from what we call a specimen. So that's an animal that's been collected, but by this point it's already died. So the artist doesn't get a chance to see it actually in its habitat. So it was very important to draw these close-ups so we can see the adaptations that these animals have to live in its habitat. And we can see from its paws, it's got these really well-adapted claws that would have evolved to grab onto woods and branches. And so we know that it would live in trees, so it's an arboreal animal. Is there anything else you noticed that would help it adapt in a certain habitat?
Well, it looks as though it's very, very hairy, a lot of fur on it. Does it live in a cold habitat?
It does, yes. So it lives up towards Nepal in the Himalayan mountain ranges. So just about as chilly as you can get. So it's adapted, and other animals, of course, have changed over time, millions of years, and they've evolved to live in all these different habitats.
Right, so they need special features to enable them to live in those habitats.
Yes.
Well, this is a good time for you to pick up those pens and papers and all your pencils again and start to add features to your imaginary animal. So think about how it might be living in a certain place and think about the features it might need. I think while they're busy drawing, we'll head up and have a look at something else.
Sounds good.
we are now in a really, really special room within the Linnean Society. This room is a room that children are not normally allowed in, so the fact that we're all in here now is really special. And with me is Isabelle. Hello, Isabelle.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do here?
Yes, I'm head of collections at the Linnean Society, and I manage the team who takes care of all the collections within our library archives and in this room.
Well, this is a very special room. No children allowed in here normally.
No children allowed.
So tell us why. Why aren't they?
It's because it's so precious. In here we have the collections of Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish naturalist that we're going to talk about a little bit. And he collected lots of specimens. So we have shells, we have butterflies, we have fish, plants. And also he had lots of books to help him work. So all the books from his library are here. All the letters that people send to him, he received letters from about 600 people throughout his lifetime. And then all his manuscripts, all his notes, his annotations, his notebooks. So it is a very precious collection.
So this is priceless, isn't it? So that's why it's in the vault. We had to come through a huge door to come in this room as well, a proper vault door. So tell us a little bit more then about Linnaeus and classification.
So Linnaeus, like many naturalists of his time, started thinking about the order of things, the way things work together in nature. And at his time, there were lots and lots of different methods of classifying what was considered to be three kingdoms of nature. So you've got the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the animal kingdom. And Linnaeus did that in very visual ways, which you can see. So this is one of his major works. It's called The System of Nature. And it simply has three big tables, one for each of the kingdoms of nature. So you've got the mineral kingdom here.
So minerals is our rocks, stones, things like that?
Yes, which we don't have here because it was sold. And then all the plant kingdom, the vegetable kingdom. And then
that's all your flowers and your things that you eat, your plants that you eat, that sort of thing.
And then finally the animal kingdom. And you can see here that there's this class called quadrupeds, which is the one that Linnaeus changed to what we now call mammals. He also called the order within that primates. So there's lots of names that we use today that Linnaeus baptized thought of, yeah.
Wow, look at that. And I see you've also brought lots of things out for us to have a look at as you were showing us, but that is a bat. Tell us a little bit about the bat.
Yes, that's a bat. And I put it there because the way you classify things sometimes is not obvious, or there's different ways of classifying things. So before Linnaeus, the bat was put with the birds, and you can see it from this book here from the 1650s. Because it's got wings, so why not, actually? We now know that it's a mammal, so it's within the mammals. And within Linnaeus' system, it's within the mammals, and not only that, within the primates, so with humans and apes, which we don't have it like this anymore. So things constantly change in classification.
Right, yes, I think they do. And here you've got a plant. Do I recognise that plant? Is that a plant that's quite useful?
Yes.
People, you might even have parts of this plant in your cupboard at home.
Indeed, it's a tea. It's a tea plant. So I've put it there because Linnaeus' systems of classifications were extremely simple, but we don't use them today. What we do still use is his binomial nomenclature, and that's the way we name organisms.
I'm going to have to ask you that name. Did you hear that? Shall we say that again? Can you tell us again?
So binomial, two, like bipeds, two, nomenclature for naming. So it's a name that is in two parts. Right. Binomial nomenclature.
Can you say that? Binomial
nomenclature.
Have a go at saying that. We'll say it one more time. Can you say it one more time for us?
Sure. Binomial nomenclature.
Quite a tongue twister, isn't it? Right, okay.
And so Linnaeus is the one who reduces very long Latin names to these two names, which if I say, for example, the name of humans that we have today, I think possibly everybody will know it. So it's Homo sapiens. So Homo for man and sapiens for wisdom. So we're the wise species of humans. And then tea was called Camellia sinensis. Sinensis is because it comes from China, and in Latin sinensis is China. So it's a very useful adjective that you tag on to the plant or the animal as a kind of adjective. You know, is the plant blue? Is the plant red? It's very useful and very simple, which is why it's still used today.
And there were other naturalists alongside Carl Linnaeus, well, before Carl Linnaeus as well, that were also trying to classify life on the planet.
Yes, and indeed still today, I would say. So it's an ongoing exercise, and because things change, you're constantly changing classification.
Golly, we are learning so much today, aren't we? So now, I think actually, before you're about to start having a go at a multiple choice question, but before that, I want you to say that word again.
Binomial nomenclature.
Binomial nomenclature. I can try and get it right myself. You hope you've all got it right in your rooms as well. Right, so now have a go at a multiple choice. Well done to everyone who took part in that last question. The answer is actually B, which is all of life, and that includes bacteria and fungi, things that are really tiny. Now, we've just stepped outside. Aisha, why have we come outside? It's quite cold out here. Why have we come out here?
Do you see, we talked a lot about classification, we've talked so much about animals, but let's see, obviously, outside of the society and in the walls, how can we look at classification in nature? You can do this yourselves as well, so maybe you've got a green space near you, or you can go out into your playground and look at all the different animals and plants that you find, and you can start to classify them. So I don't know at the moment if you've noticed there's quite a lot of squirrels running around.
There are a lot of squirrels running around here, yes.
They're making sure they put down a lot of nice fats reserved for the winter. So let's look at the squirrel. So the squirrel is what we've had. How can we classify the squirrel? So is it a plant?
No, it's not a plant. Squirrel's not a plant, is it? It's an animal.
It's an animal. Does it have a backbone or is it invertebrates?
Oh, I think a squirrel has a backbone, doesn't it? Just like you and I. Yes, a backbone.
Yeah, and then we know, of course, that it's covered in fur, it has its 4 legs, and it gives birth to live young, so it's a mammal. So by doing this, we're already starting to use those skills that we looked at to classify the world around us. And this is great, we can do it absolutely anywhere we go out to. So go to your green spaces and have a look and start using these new classification skills to look at the animals and plants around you.
So this is something that you can do as well, either at home or out in your playground, out in your local park. There is some resources that you can actually download from the website to help you as well, so do take part in this. And tell us a little bit more about the scientists and things that we've got from the Linnean Society.
Yeah, so of course we've learned a lot about our scientists from the past, but scientists that we have at the Linnean Society are still currently doing research and lots of field work as well, and they call them fellows. But of course I'm explaining this to you, and you are actually one of our fellows.
I am. I'm very proud to say that I am a fellow Linnean Society and incredibly proud to be one as well. And I'm actually studying dung beetles. So I'm going out around farms looking at dung pats and trying to find out more about the dung beetles, because we're trying to do conservation work, and to help conserve them, we need to know how they're living. So it's really important I collect lots of data when I'm out doing this work.
Fantastic, and that's what I'm so glad you said that, collecting data as well, because we've talked a lot about, you know, scientists from the past. They were collecting specimens, which was obviously removing these animals from their habitat, and we want to conserve them, and this doesn't obviously go hand in hand. So there's lots of other ways that scientists and fellows can do this research without taking things from the habitat. They can use cameras, they can take different data, different samples from the soil. This helps, as you say, build up this big picture of how can we conserve these animals. So if we take, for example, the orangutans from Malaysia, one of the biggest threats to them at the moment is deforestation. because of the use of palm oil as well. So all of these palm trees are being planted, which is taking away their natural habitat of other trees as well. So by learning more about them and that they need lots of different types of trees, lots of different types of food sources, it gives us a better, bigger picture to help to conserve this species going forward.
So classifying the animals and learning more about them helps us to understand the habitats as well. And it's really important how those animals interact with their habitats. So I want you to think about the drawing that you're doing right now. Think of some features that you can put on your creature that enable it to adapt to the habitat it's living in. Perhaps it's on the land, perhaps it's up in the trees, perhaps it's even in the ocean. That's up to you, but think how it would have adaptations to help it in that environment. Now, Aisha, it's getting really quite cold. I think you carry on drawing and we're going to go back inside. Okay, everybody, stop drawing. Well done for taking part. Remember, this is a competition, so if you want to win that prize, you must send in a picture of your picture to social media with the hashtag STEMLive, and we really look forward to seeing some of those pictures. So well done for taking part. You can finish it, if you'd like to finish it a little bit more, after the lesson. But right now, I'm here in the library with Isabelle. Isabelle, this is an amazing space. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, it's a late 19th century, so the building was built in 1873, and we're right on very busy Piccadilly for any of you who have ever come to London, very close to the Royal Academy of Arts and very close to the Ritz.
It's a fantastic place. Now, a library's obviously got loads of books in it. How many books have you got here?
About, we're not sure, but probably around 100,000. So a lot.
100,000 books. That's a lot of reading, isn't it? You must have some really special books here then.
Yes, and I think one of the most precious is actually here. It's On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin.
Okay, so Charles Darwin, you should all know a little bit about Charles Darwin. And there's a picture of him up here, in fact,
yes,
isn't there?
Yeah, well, they both have big beards, but the bigger picture is Charles Darwin. The other one is Alfred Russel Wallace. And together, these two men quite independently came up with the theory of evolution by natural selection. So Darwin came up with it first, Wallace slightly later, but then they were writing together and decided to present their theory of evolution at a meeting of the Linnean Society. So they're very important people for the Linnean Society, because the theory of evolution that we still use today in terms of biology, everyday biology, came from these two men at a meeting here at the Linnean Society.
That's very impressive. Can you tell us a little bit more then about adaptation and evolution?
Yeah, so evolution it departs from people like Linnaeus, who we've just talked about, in that Linnaeus thought that species didn't change. Wallace and Darwin proved that organisms change because they adapt to their environment, and the organism that is best adapted to the environment passes on the genes and has babies or offspring who will then carry on these traits or characters that make it successful for them to survive in their environment. And of course, an environment can change, so characters that make adaptation more easy or more difficult also change. And that's what evolution is about. It's about survival of the fittest in a way. And evolution can take a very, very long time, or it can be very, very brief. And I have here an example of the peppercorn moth, which, as you see, was adapted to live on trees and lichen. So its wings are, you can't see it in the wild if it's on the tree of or on the bark of a birch, for example, or on lichen. But with pollution in 19th century London, the barks of the trees became very black. And there happened to be one mutation, one of, or several of these moths that became black. And because the white ones like this were being eaten, that black one survived better and passed on that character. But then when pollution started reducing in London, then the white ones came again. So it's a whole process, constantly changing.
So it's always changing then.
Always
so
changing.
If you can imagine, a moth that's a white colour on a black background is going to get eaten, isn't it? It's going to show up, the predators are going to find it and they're going to eat it. Whereas if you're a black moth on a black background, you're camouflaged and you can hide there. And hopefully you will find another one and you can have babies. So it just keeps changing like that.
It keeps changing. And that's what evolution is about.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for telling us all about that, Isabelle. So there's lots of things we've learned today. And now is a time for your teachers to take part in a Slido themselves. We've really enjoyed doing these lessons. We're going to be doing more for you as well. But we'd like some feedback from you. So if you have a look now on your Slido, you can fill in the poll with some comments. We'd really, really like that feedback. Thank you very much. And while your teachers are doing that, it's time for us to have a bit of a recap. We arrived and met Aisha, who taught us all about Carl Linnaeus and his system for classifying plants and animals, which we learnt was called taxonomy. We went up the huge staircase, surrounded by all the beautiful pictures, and discovered more about how habitats and food chains require organisms to adapt. Then we met Isabelle in the vaults and saw some of the precious objects kept in there. She told us about Linnaeus' classification system, and that really difficult word, do you remember? I'll see if I can pronounce it. Binomial nomenclature. After that, we went outside into the park to find out how scientists collect data from around the world. And finally, we visited the library where Isabelle introduced us to Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace. And we learnt a little bit more about evolution and natural selection. Wow, hasn't it been a really busy lesson? It's been an incredible day altogether, and it's time for you to be thinking about those questions that you can send in for Isabelle and Aisha to answer. So start thinking about those questions and send them in on your Slido. We're back here now in the library and we've been joined again by Aisha. Hi Aisha, good to have you back with us. You've been really busy thinking about your questions. Well done everybody, got some really fantastic questions, so we're going to get straight into it. And we're going to start with this very first question, which is absolutely brilliant. How do you classify a duck-billed platypus?
It's a very, very, very good question, and it was also a puzzle that they had at the time as well, because as we talked about, those very specific things that we need to do when classifying, and one of the big things for mammals was, of course, that they give birth to live young, while the platypus, of course, lays eggs. But when they were looking at it, all the other things pointed towards it being a mammal. So they feed their young off milk, of course their bodies are covered in fur, and they're warm-blooded as well. So it was discussed, and even though they do fall a little bit out of the normal classification category for mammals, they do go into mammals along with echidnids, who are also a marsupial, so that's a pouched animal that give birth to, lay eggs rather than giving birth to live young like other mammals.
So that's an echidnid?
Yes.
Echidnid. So Google or look up echidnid and then you'll be able to see what that animal looks like. Right, let's have another question. Let's have a look. Have you always wanted to work in the Linnean Society? So this is for both of you.
I wanted to be an archaeologist, actually, but in many ways, when I did my PhD, I was a researcher here, and I always thought I really, really want to be working here later on, and here I am. So, yes, I have for a long while. I've wanted to work here, and I think a lot of what we do with books, and it's very close to history and archaeology. So I'm very happy.
Very happy. Yeah.
I always wanted to work with animals. I did zoology. I thought they'd be live animals, but over the years I've realised that I very much enjoy working with specimens and looking at them in books. I was a teacher and I've always loved education, and just inviting young people to discover the world of natural history. So the Linnean Society was a perfect place for me to match my passion for natural history and introducing it to everybody as well.
We certainly do that here. It's absolutely stunning building as well. Let's have a look at another question. Oh, this is a very good question for you actually, Isabelle. If children are not allowed in the vault, then who is?
Well, we have guided tours where people can come in, but you see, even Aisha is not allowed in the vault on her own. So researchers and some visitors under supervision of people who work in collections. So it's quite limited, because you have to bear in mind that the greatest risk for a collection like this is pests, like little beetles, for example, who will come and eat the collections. So you have to limit the people coming in carrying potential pests into the collection store or the vault where we were. So it's a balance between providing access and then keeping those collections safe.
Right. So, but open to scientists that come here
Absolutely,
and study
yes.
and things like that.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look here. Here's quite a good question. This is all relates to classification, so well done for this question. What makes an insect an insect?
This is a good one as well. A lot of the time I see people go, oh, it's an insect, and a spider scuttles by, and I'm like, that's not an insect, because of course, as we know, it has 8 legs. So an insect always has 3 body parts. So if you can imagine an ant, you know that it's got a head. This is what's called the thorax, kind of like if you imagine from its neck to its waist, and then it's got its abdomen at the bottom. And of course it has 6 legs. And we know if it had 8 legs, it would be a spider. So yeah, an insect has 3 body parts and 6 legs.
So there we are. Well done. Someone was learning about their classification. Well done. Here's another good question. Is it true Charles Darwin used to eat the animals he collected? Is that true?
You go. I know you tell that story. So
I love this question, yes. I love this question because obviously Charles Darwin was an amazing scientist, and we know a lot about his work, of course, his observations and his theory of evolution. But what a lot of people don't know is his love for trying food. So often he'd go out and he'd observe these animals, he'd draw them, he'd record what he found. But he also liked to eat them. So he'd see all these wonderful animals and be like, oh, look at the shape of its beak in the case of the finches. And then he'd sit down and be like, oh, I'm going to now have a little munch and a crunch on them. So he did it most famously when he was at Cambridge. He was actually part of a club called the Glutton Club. As you can imagine, they all got together and sampled a lot of the local British wildlife, most notably a brown owl, which put a lot of them off because the brown owl had been dead for quite some time.
Oh my Lord.
So it wasn't to its finest tasting. And of course, when he went to the Galapagos and South America, there were so many new things for him to try. And Darwin and his shipmates, one of their favourite, and unfortunately for this animal, easiest to catch animals.
I'm beginning to wonder what that is.
Yes, well, you can imagine it's very slow moving. It almost came ready prepared in its own soup bowl as well. And it was also very easy to stack on top of each other. for easy transportation, and would just eat grass. So it was quite easy to feed on long journeys.
Can you imagine what that might be? I think, is that a tortoise?
It was one of the giant Galapagos tortoises, yes. They were very fond of eating the meats.
So scientists don't do this today, by the way. They don't go around
but they do
eating everything,
taste.
do they? They do taste.
They use taste for as part of identification. So we work with botanists, for example, and if you go on a walk with a botanist and you'll say, "Oh, what's that plant?" Often I've seen them kind of pick up a leaf and put it in their mouth to have a taste. So taste kind of comes into identification of plants. I don't know whether they do the same with insects.
But they do it with fossils as well.
Yeah.
Of course, one of my favourite fossils is a coprolite, which is a fossilised dinosaur poo. And one of the ways to do it is to put it on your tongue and to see whether or not it sticks, I think, isn't it? And if it sticks, it's fossil. And if it doesn't stick, it's not fossilised poo. So wow. There we go. There's many fantastic things you end up doing in the field of science.
I must just quickly say, do not go round just tasting things, okay, if you're out and about. Don't do that. This is what some scientists who know what they're looking at already. So don't just go around and eat everything you find. I didn't know that about Charles Darwin. Right, let's have a look. Let's see what else. Here's a good question as well. What is your biggest specimen? What is your biggest specimen?
That would be the python. We have a python skin, the skin of a snake, which happens to be a python. It's kept rolled, but we know that unrolled, because it was unrolled to conserve it, and it's about 2 meters long, unrolled. And it was captured by Alfred Russel Wallace. So we talked about Wallace as a co-discoverer of the theory of evolution. And he was in a hut somewhere in Indonesia, and woke up one morning to find this great big python in the rafters. And so it was pulled down. It's illustrated in the book that he wrote, actually. There's someone pulling down this python, and it was killed, and we have it in our collections. It's probably the biggest animal we have.
Wow. Now, a python's the one that squeezes you to death, isn't it? Runs venom and bites you, I think.
Yes, and then can eat prey, very, very big prey, and then takes weeks to digest.
And that was a very big python, so I think Wallace was very lucky not to end up inside it. Right, let's see what else we can find. Here's another question. What is your favourite object? Now, you've got so many things here. What's your favourite object?
Oh, I'll let you go first with this one. I'll have a think.
It's not a very beautiful object, but it's probably a notebook written by Linnaeus when he was a student. And it's very touching because it brings him to life as a young man.
And I think mine is, we've got a plaque remembering John Franklin, who was the leader of the expedition to the Northwest Passage. And
whereabouts is that?
So that was going through Canada. So instead of going all the way down south, they wanted to find a quicker passage so that they could get from the UK over to Asia, so they could get more silks and spices easier. So it was a big race. Lots of people were trying, and John Franklin and his crew went to go and try and find a route. And it was his wife, Jane Franklin. She fought very heavily to get him remembered, and when he failed to come back. So it's we have a plaque here, and there's several in London as well to commemorate his journey to the Northwest Passage.
It's a lot of those things. Wow. Right, let's have a look. We've got time for one last question, and it is this one. This is a big question, actually. What do you like best about working in the Linnean Society?
The variety of the job. I do lots of things. I work with lots of objects, but I also work with lots of people who come here to research our collections. And everybody that I work with, all these researchers come from all sorts of walks of life. We work with artists, we work with scientists, we work with historians, and everybody uses these collections in various different ways. So it's kind of working with all the researchers and visitors that come to us.
Yeah.
Mine is welcoming new faces. to the Linnean Society. We do school workshops, so we actually invite people to come in, see our collections, and do different types of workshops. We introduce them to all of the amazing pieces we've got, some of the books and original specimens. So I think that's my favourite bit, definitely.
And so schools around London, you actually go and visit them and they can come here. And if somebody's here with their mums and dads, can they drop in and see the Linnean Society?
Yes, definitely. We're more than welcome. We're open Tuesday to Friday from 10 till 5. If you wanted to come and sit and do some work here, all you'd need to do is just email so we can expect you to come, and anything that you might want out and ready to look at. Especially in these winter months as well, if you're looking for somewhere to warm up and just relax in some, and have a nice quiet read. It's the fantastic place. You're not going to find many nice quiet spots in Piccadilly. So yes, please do come and visit us and see all of this fantastic stuff for yourselves.
Brilliant. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. I certainly have. I've learnt a lot, and what an amazing building, and full of such incredible things as well. Now, don't forget that competition. Finish off your pictures if you haven't already, and send a picture into social media with the hashtag STEMLive. You can also watch some previous lessons that we've done on demand on our website, so just have a look and see what you can find. So all that remains now is for the three of us to say goodbye. I'm afraid it's time for us to go. Bye.
Bye.